Hello Year 6, welcome to today's reading lesson. Now, we are going to be continuing to look at Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and we're looking at the next chapter. So, your task for today. As we read through, there's a couple of questions for you to be thinking about, but you don't need to write them down. And then after that, you are going to be predicting what might happen in the future, but you're going to write it out as like a story, okay? I'll come to more details about that, but first, let's get into my screen and into the text. Okay, so as I said, we're going to be looking at the next chapter, which is called The Deal, and you're going to be predicting about what you think might happen next based on previous events. So, here are some questions that I want you to be thinking about as I'm reading through. So why do you think this chapter is called The Deal? What do you notice about the way Julian speaks to adults, which is maybe different than what he speaks to children? And how does Oggy let Mum know that he wants to leave? Okay, 3 questions that you don't need to write in your books, although you could do if you want to. Definitely not going to tell you off for doing more work than what you need to. But yeah, last chapter, if you've not read it, make sure you read it. And they've been on this tour, and it turns out that Julian's just not particularly pleasant at all. So he asked some pretty horrible questions to August about his face, and then he also kind of barged past him as well. So in this chapter, we are heading back to where his mum is. So, the deal. Mum and Mr. Tushman were talking when we got back to the office. Mrs. Garcia was the first to see us come back, and she started smiling her shiny smile as we walked in. So, August, what do you think? Did you like what you saw? She asked. Yeah, I nodded, looking over at Mum. Jack, Julian and Charlotte were standing by the door, not sure where to go or if they were still needed. I wondered what else they'd been told about me before they'd met me. Did you see the baby chick? Mum asked me. As I shook my head, Julian said, Are you talking about the baby chicks in science? Those get donated to a farm at the end of every school year. Oh, said Mum, disappointed. But they hatch new ones every year in science, Julian added, so August will be able to see them again in the spring. Oh, good, said Mum, eyeing me. They were so cute, August. I wish she wouldn't talk to me like that, like I was a baby in front of other people. So, August, said Mr. Tushman, did these guys show you around enough, or do you want to see more? I realised I forgot to ask you to show you the gym, to ask them to show you the gym. We did anyway, Mr. Tushman, said Julian. Excellent, said Mr. Tushman. And I told him about the old school play and some of the electives, said Charlotte. Oh no, she said suddenly. We forgot to show him the art room. That's okay, said Mr. Tushman. But we can show it to him now, Charlotte offered. Don't we have to pick Via up soon? I said to Mum. That was our signal for my telling Mum if I really wanted to leave. Oh, you're right, said Mum, getting up. I could tell she was pretending to check the time on her watch. I'm sorry, everybody. I lost track of the time. We have to go and pick up my daughter at her new school. She's taken an unofficial tour today. This part wasn't a lie. That Via was checking out her new school today. The part that was a lie that we were picking her up at the school, which we weren't. She was coming home with Dad later. Where does she go to school? Asked Mr. Tushman, getting up. She's starting Faulkner High School this fall. That's like the autumn. Wow, that's not an easy school to get into. Good for her. Thank you, said Mum, nodding. It'll be a bit of a schlep though. That means like a bit of a journey. The A train down to the 86, then the cross-town bus all the way to the east side. Takes an hour that way, but it's just a 15-minute drive. It will be worth it. I know a couple of kids who got into Faulkner and love it, said Mr. Tushman. We should really go, Mum, I said, tugging at her pocketbook. We said goodbye kind of quickly after that. I think Mr. Tushman was a little surprised that we were leaving so suddenly, and then I wondered if he would blame Jack and Charlotte, even though it was really only Julian who made me feel kind of bad. Everyone was really nice. I made sure to tell Mr. Tushman before we left. I look forward to having you as a student, said Mr. Tushman, patting my back. Bye, I said to Jack, Charlotte and Julian, but I didn't look up at them, or look up at all, until I left the building. Okay, that is the end of the chapter. So hopefully we looked at those questions. Now, what I think, why do you think this chapter is called The Deal? Well, at an earlier point in it, it says that, like, I think that Mum and Oggy made a deal that if he ever wanted to leave, he would say this line about oh, do we not need to pick Vera up? And then Mum would have to agree with it. So the deal was that if he wanted to leave, he could say that, and then Mum would get him to leave. What do you notice about how Julian speaks to the adults? Well, he's very nice, isn't he? He's really nice in front of the adults, but obviously behind the adults' backs, he's not particularly. And then how does Oggy let Mum know that he wants to leave? Like it says, he makes his comment about picking beer up. So your task year 6. You are going to be imagine that there's a conversation between Oggy's mum and Oggy's dad later on in that evening about how the day went. Okay, and you're going to write a short section, so I'm only looking for a few paragraphs about how that conversation might go. Okay, now I want you to write it as a bit of like spoken words. So as a Ready Steady Go say here, ready, just write the spoken sentences. So what did Oggy's mum say, what did Oggy's dad say? But most of us should be able to have a go at steady, okay? So most of us should be able to do a bit of a speech burger. So that makes sure we balance speech, accent and description. And then the go is to make sure we perfectly accurately punctuate our sentences. Here's a picture of the speech burger in case you need a reminder. So we have some description, which is our fries. We have the top bread where character 1 says something, so that could be Oggy's mum, and then she does something, then character 2 does something, and then character 2 says something. Now I'm not going to write down an example of how I'd do this, but I will just give you a verbal one. So let's imagine that Oggy's mum and dad are sat together after Oggy's gone to bed. And this is kind of the thing I'd write. The room felt quiet now that the kids are in bed, and Oggy's mum and Oggy's dad's finally sat down to talk about the day. How did it go? Was he okay? Asked Oggy's dad. His face was clearly questioning everything that had happened, whether he was unsure whether they'd made the right decision. Oggy's mum shuffled in her chair and replied, I'm not sure. He seemed okay, but I really don't know what happened. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. You might add a little bit more. So we've got action, we've got description, and we have got the speech. So I think that's all I need to say. So year 6, I'm looking forward to seeing your work. Give it a good go. And yeah, looking for that speech punctuation, making sure we're using inverted commas correctly and commas and all of that kind of stuff. Question marks, exclamation marks. There's lots to think about. Give it a good go, year 6. Goodbye.